The elevator doors slid open with a soft ding, and Marcus Sterling stepped into the marble lobby of Manhattan's most exclusive pediatric clinic. The man who had built a tech empire worth $12 billion suddenly felt his knees buckle. There she was, Sophia. Subscribe to our channel for more shocking true stories that will leave you speechless. Hit that notification bell, because you won't believe what happens next in this heart-stopping tale of love, betrayal, and the ultimate twist of fate. Marcus gripped the reception desk, his knuckles white against the polished granite. 5 years. 5 years since their bitter divorce, since the endless fertility treatments, since the doctor's final verdict that shattered their marriage. Sophia Sterling will never conceive naturally. But there she sat in the waiting area, her auburn hair catching the afternoon sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. And beside her, Marcus felt the world tilt on its axis, were 2 identical little girls, maybe 4 years old, with his distinctive green eyes and Sophia's delicate features. "Mommy, when will the doctor see us?" one of the twins asked, tugging at Sophia's cream-colored blazer. "Soon, sweetheart," Sophia whispered, smoothing the child's dark curls. "Emma, sit still for Mommy, okay?" "Mommy." The word hit Marcus like a physical blow. He ducked behind a marble pillar, his hands trembling as he pulled out his phone to call his assistant. "Cancel everything," he barked into the device. "And find out everything you can about Sophia Sophia Reynolds now for the past 5 years. Everything." The memories flooded back unbidden. Their wedding day at the Plaza Hotel, Sophia radiant in ivory silk, her eyes sparkling with dreams of the children they would have. The first year of trying, when it was still fun, still hopeful. The second year, when the pressure began to mount. The third year, when doctors became their constant companions, and their bedroom became a clinical laboratory. He remembered the night she'd thrown the pregnancy test across their bathroom, sobbing as another month of hope crumbled into despair. He remembered holding her hair back as she vomited from hormone treatments, her body rejecting every attempt to coax it into motherhood. He remembered the final specialist, Dr. Morrison, delivering the verdict with professional sympathy. Severe scarring from endometriosis, fallopian tubes blocked beyond repair, less than 1% chance of natural conception. "We could try IVF," Sophia had whispered that night, her face swollen from crying. "We've tried everything," Marcus had replied, his own heart breaking as he watched the woman he loved disappear into grief. "Maybe it's time to accept..." "Accept what?" "That I'm defective, that I'm not a real woman." The fights that followed had been nuclear. Accusations, blame, desperate attempts to fix something that couldn't be fixed. Marcus threw himself into work, building his empire while his marriage crumbled. Sophia threw herself into treatments, spending their money on procedure after procedure that yielded nothing but heartbreak. The divorce papers cited irreconcilable differences, but the truth was simpler. They'd loved each other too much to keep destroying each other with their shared grief. Dr. Patricia Wells, the clinic's head pediatrician, was an old family friend. Marcus cornered her in her office an hour later, his usual composure completely shattered. "Those children with Sophia," he demanded without preamble, "are they adopted?" Dr. Wells glanced up from her charts, her expression carefully neutral. "Marcus, you know I can't discuss patient information." "Patricia, please." His voice cracked. "I need to know. Are those girls? Could they possibly be biologically hers?" Dr. Wells set down her pen, studying Marcus's haggard expression. "What makes you think they aren't adopted?" Marcus slumped into the leather chair across from her desk. "They look exactly like her, like us. Those eyes, Patricia, they have my eyes. The shape of her mouth, but my mother's nose. It's impossible, but..." Dr. Wells was quiet for a long moment. "Marcus, I delivered thousands of babies in my career. I've seen medical miracles, scientific breakthroughs, prayers answered in ways that defy explanation. The human body is remarkably resilient, remarkably adaptive. But you said, the specialists all said, she could never... I said she could never conceive naturally with the scar tissue damage from her endometriosis. But medical technology advances rapidly. IVF procedures, egg donation, surrogacy, experimental treatments. There are many paths to motherhood now that weren't available 5 years ago." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that if someone were determined enough, wealthy enough if they had access to cutting-edge reproductive technology. Dr. Wells paused, choosing her words carefully. Sometimes the impossible becomes possible. Egg donation? You mean those might not even be her biological children? Or they might be exactly that. Marcus, have you considered that maybe you're seeing what you want to see? Maybe these children remind you of what you and Sophia might have had together, and your mind is creating connections that... No. Marcus stood abruptly. Those are her children. Our children. I can feel it. But as he left Dr. Wells's office, doubt crept in. Was he losing his mind? Was grief making him see resemblances that didn't exist? Or was his intuition telling him something his rational mind couldn't accept? Marcus's private investigator, David Chen, was worth every penny of his exorbitant fees. By evening, he delivered a preliminary report that sent Marcus's world spinning further off its axis. Your ex-wife did remarry, David confirmed, spreading photographs across Marcus's mahogany desk. Dr. James Reynolds, fertility specialist at Mount Sinai. They married 18 months ago, but the interesting thing is the timeline. Marcus studied the wedding photos. Sophia radiant in a simple white dress, the twins as flower girls scattering petals down the aisle of a small church. They looked happy, complete, like a family that had always been meant to be. The twins were born 4 years and 3 months ago, David continued, which means Sophia was pregnant before she even met Dr. Reynolds. In fact, she was a single mother for almost 3 years before the marriage. Where did she go? After our divorce, where did she disappear to? London. She moved to London 6 months after your divorce was finalized, lived there for 2.5 years, then moved back to New York when she married Reynolds. London. Marcus felt the pieces clicking into place. London, where experimental fertility treatments were more advanced, more aggressive. London, where regulations were different, where possibilities existed that American medicine hadn't yet embraced. There's more, David said, his voice carefully neutral. I found records of legal proceedings 3 years after your divorce. Your ex-wife sued Manhattan Reproductive Services, the clinic where you both underwent treatment during your marriage. Marcus felt his blood freeze. What kind of lawsuit? Breach of contract. Apparently, there was a dispute over the disposal of frozen embryos. The room spun. Marcus gripped the edge of his desk, remembering suddenly the forms they'd signed. The clinical discussions about what-if scenarios. If their marriage ended, if one of them died, if the treatments failed, what would happen to any genetic material they'd contributed? She won the lawsuit, David continued. The court ruled in her favor, granting her custody of 12 frozen embryos created during your marriage. The clinic was ordered to release them to her care. 12 embryos, Marcus whispered. We created 12 embryos. According to the medical records I was able to obtain through unofficial channels. Your ex-wife transported those embryos to a clinic in London, the Harrington Institute for Reproductive Medicine. They specialize in high-risk IVF cases, experimental procedures. Marcus stared at the photographs of Emma and Lily, their innocent faces smiling up at him from the wedding pictures. They used our embryos. It appears so. The twins are genetically yours and Sophia's, conceived through IVF using frozen embryos from your marriage, carried to term and born in London 4 years ago. The weight of it hit Marcus like a physical blow. Somewhere in London, while he'd been building his empire and dating socialites and convincing himself he'd moved on, Sophia had been carrying his children. She'd given birth to his daughters alone, raised them for years as a single mother, built a life he'd never even imagined. There's something else, David said quietly. Medical records show that your ex-wife suffered complications during the pregnancy. Severe preeclampsia, emergency C-section at 34 weeks. The baby spent 6 weeks in NICU. She almost died, Marcus. The room felt airless. While he'd been living his bachelor lifestyle, attending galas and closing business deals, Sophia had been fighting for her life and the lives of their children. Alone. Marcus waited in the parking garage of the twins' preschool, his Lamborghini hidden behind a concrete pillar. His hands shook as he gripped the steering wheel, rehearsing conversations that felt impossible. What do you say to the woman who bore your children in secret? What do you say to daughters who don't know you exist? What do you say to daughters who don't know you exist? When Sophia emerged with Emma and Lily, their small hands clutched in hers, their backpacks decorated with unicorns and dinosaurs, Marcus stepped into the fluorescent light. "Hello, Sophia." She froze, her face going pale beneath her careful makeup. The twins looked up at him with curious green eyes, his eyes staring back at him from two small innocent faces. "Marcus," her voice was barely a whisper, "what are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing." His gaze dropped to the girls, who had moved to stand protectively on either side of their mother. Funny thing about genetics, isn't it? How certain traits just appear. Emma, bolder than her sister, stepped forward slightly. "Mommy, who is this man?" Sophia's jaw tightened. "Girls, get in the car now." "But Mommy..." "Now Emma, Lily, you too." As the children climbed reluctantly into her BMW, their whispered questions audible through the open windows, Sophia turned back to Marcus. Her dark eyes blazed with a fury he remembered all too well, but underneath it he saw something else. Fear. "You have no right..." "No right?" Marcus stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "No right to ask about children who look exactly like the babies we lost. No right to wonder how my supposedly barren ex-wife is suddenly a mother to twins who share my DNA. They're not yours." But her voice wavered and Marcus caught the lie. "Prove it. Take a paternity test. Look me in the eye and tell me those aren't our embryos, our children are... They're my children." Sophia's voice cracked, years of suppressed emotion finally breaking free. "I carried them, I birthed them. I raised them alone for 3 years while you were living your perfect bachelor life. You stole them from me. I saved them." The words echoed in the concrete garage, raw and desperate. "You gave up, Marcus. You walked away from our marriage, from our dreams, from everything we were trying to build. You said you were done trying to have a family. I never said..." "You didn't have to say it. I watched you check out emotionally, physically. You stopped coming to appointments, stopped caring whether the treatments worked. You were already planning your exit strategy before you even filed for divorce." The accusation hit him like a slap because it carried the sting of truth. He had checked out, overwhelmed by the constant cycle of hope and disappointment, exhausted by watching Sophia's desperation consume her. "So you decided to have our children without me. I decided to give those embryos a chance at life. They were going to be destroyed, Marcus, thrown away like medical waste. I couldn't let that happen. They were our embryos. We created them together. You had no right, I had every right." Sophia's voice broke completely now, tears streaming down her face. "They were made from my eggs, my body. I went through hell to create them. The hormone shots, the procedures, the retrieval surgery. And when our marriage fell apart, you were ready to just let them die." Marcus felt his own composure cracking. "I thought we agreed. You assumed. You signed the papers without even discussing it with me. Dispose of genetic material in the event of divorce. That was just a legal formality to you. But to me, those embryos were our babies waiting to be born. So you sued the clinic. I fought for them for 2 years, spent every penny of my inheritance on legal fees because they were all I had left of us, of what we could have been. And when I finally won the right to use them, you were already engaged to that socialite. What was her name?" "Rebecca." Marcus winced. His brief engagement to Rebecca Morrison had been tabloid fodder for months, though it had fizzled out within a year. That wasn't serious." "No, Marcus. Nothing was ever serious for you after our divorce. But I was in London alone, going through IVF procedures that nearly killed me, praying those embryos would implant, praying I could give them the life they deserved." "You could have told me. Why? So you could demand custody? Take them away from the woman who almost died bringing them into this world? Or worse, so you could reject them the way you rejected me?" The words hung between them like a chasm. In her car, Emma and Lily watched through the windows, their small faces pressed against the glass, sensing the emotional storm, even if they couldn't understand its meaning. "I would never have rejected them," Marcus said quietly. "Wouldn't you? Marcus, you couldn't even handle the stress of trying to conceive them. What makes you think you could have handled the reality of raising them?" It was a question he couldn't answer because she was right. The man he'd been 5 years ago, ambitious, impatient, allergic to anything that couldn't be controlled or conquered, might very well have seen unexpected children as a complication rather than a blessing. That's when Dr. James Reynolds appeared, having arrived to pick up his family from school. He was everything Marcus wasn't. Tall where Marcus was average height, sandy-haired where Marcus was dark, radiating the kind of calm competence that came from years of dealing with medical crises. He looked like the kind of man who coached Little League and never missed a parent-teacher conference. "Everything all right?" James asked, his arm sliding protectively around Sophia's shoulders as he assessed the situation with a doctor's practiced eye. "This is Marcus," Sophia said quietly, her voice still thick with tears. "The girl's biological father." James went very still, his hand tightening slightly on Sophia's shoulder. Then, to Marcus's surprise, he extended his other hand with professional courtesy. "James Reynolds, I think we need to talk." They met that evening at a neutral location, the bar at the Four Seasons, where the ambient noise would mask their conversation and the expensive scotch might dull the sharp edges of this impossible situation. Marcus had expected animosity, legal threats, possessiveness. Instead, he found something far more unsettling: understanding. "I knew this day would come," James said simply, swirling his whiskey with practiced ease. "Sophia told me everything before we married. About the embryos, about you, about the legal battle she'd fought to use them. I went into our relationship knowing that someday you might want to be part of their lives." Marcus had prepared for a fight. This reasonable response threw him completely off balance. "They're my biological children." "Yes," James agreed without hesitation, "and I've been their father for 2 years. I'm the one who taught them to ride bikes. Who sits up with them when they have nightmares about monsters under the bed? Who knows that Emma refuses to eat anything green, and Lily still sleeps with a stuffed elephant named Mr. Peanuts that she's had since she was 6 months old?" The casual intimacy of those details hit Marcus like a physical blow. This man knew his daughters in ways Marcus never would, knew their fears and preferences, their bedtime rituals and favorite stories. "Sophia went through hell to have those children," James continued, his voice gentle but firm. "The pregnancy nearly killed her. Severe preeclampsia. Emergency surgery at 34 weeks. The twins spent the first 6 weeks of their lives in incubators, fighting for every breath. Sophia lived at the hospital, pumping breast milk every 2 hours, reading to them through the isolette walls, willing them to survive." Each word was another small wound. Marcus had been completely ignorant of his daughter's dramatic entry into the world, of the medical crisis that had threatened all 3 lives he now desperately wanted to be part of. "She was alone," James said quietly. "No family support. Her parents died when she was young, remember? No partner to share the fear or the sleepless nights. Just her and 2 premature babies who needed round-the-clock medical care." "I didn't know," Marcus whispered. "How could you? She was protecting herself, protecting them. She'd already lost you once. She wasn't going to risk losing them, too." "She should have told me." "Should she?" "Marcus, can you honestly say you would have dropped everything and flown to London to support the woman who just spent 2 years fighting you in court? Can you honestly say you would have wanted to be a father to children with someone you'd divorced?" The question hung between them, brutal in its honesty. Marcus stared into his scotch, seeing the reflection of a man he wasn't sure he recognized anymore. "When did you meet her?" Marcus asked eventually. 3 years ago. Emma and Lily were barely walking. Sophia was working part-time at a medical research company, struggling to pay for childcare, exhausted from being a single mother to twins. James smiled, and for a moment his professional composure softened into something more personal. She brought the girls to the hospital's charity carnival. Lily had fallen and scraped her knee, and Sophia was trying to clean the wound while Emma was having a meltdown about missing the pony rides. Marcus could picture it perfectly. Sophia overwhelmed and juggling 2 toddlers, trying to be everything to everyone. I helped bandage Lily's knee and convinced the carnival organizers to let Emma have an extra pony ride. Sophia burst into tears right there in front of everyone, said it was the first time in months that anyone had helped her without expecting anything in return. The image of Sophia crying from simple kindness made Marcus's chest ache. She'd always been proud, independent, reluctant to accept help. For her to break down in front of a stranger meant she'd been pushed beyond her limits. We started talking. She told me about the girls, about raising them alone, about how much she loved being their mother, even when it was the hardest thing she'd ever done. I told her about my work in fertility medicine, about how much I respected women who fought so hard to bring children into the world. And you fell in love with all three of them. Instantly, James admitted. Emma with her fierce independence, Lily with her gentle sweetness, and Sophia with her incredible strength. I'd seen hundreds of patients go through fertility treatments, but I'd never met anyone who'd sacrificed so much for the chance to be a mother. Marcus felt a stab of something that might have been jealousy, or might have been regret. This man had seen and valued the parts of Sophia that Marcus had taken for granted. Her determination, her capacity for love, her willingness to fight for what mattered most. I proposed after 6 months, James continued. Not just to Sophia, but to the girls too. I asked all three of them if they wanted to be a family. Emma said yes if I promised to teach her to drive when she was old enough. Lily said yes if I promised never to leave them the way their first daddy had. The words hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. Their first daddy? That's how Sophia explained your absence. She told them their first daddy had lived far away and couldn't take care of them. But that didn't mean he didn't love them. She never spoke badly of you, Marcus. Never made you the villain in their story. Marcus felt tears he hadn't expected burning behind his eyes. Even after everything, the bitter divorce, the years of silence, the secret pregnancy and birth, Sophia had protected his reputation with their children. What do you want, Marcus? James asked gently. Really want? Because if this is about money or ownership, or winning some kind of victory over Sophia, those little girls will be the ones who pay the price for that kind of war. Marcus left the Four Seasons more confused than when he'd arrived. He drove aimlessly through Manhattan, his mind churning with James's words, with images of Emma and Lily laughing at the playground, with the memory of Sophia's tear-streaked face in the parking garage. He ended up at his penthouse staring out at the city lights when his phone rang. His sister Catherine's name appeared on the screen. "You sound terrible," she said without preamble when he answered. "Thanks, that's exactly what I needed to hear. Mom told me what happened. About Sophia and the children. Marcus had called their mother in a moment of weakness, needing someone to validate his anger and shock. Instead, Eleanor Sterling had listened quietly and then said, 'Those poor little girls. This must be so confusing for them. Cat, I don't know what to do,' he admitted now, exhaustion finally overtaking adrenaline. 'Do you love them?' Catherine asked simply. 'I don't know them.' 'That's not what I asked. When you saw them in that clinic, when you realized they were yours, what did you feel?' Marcus thought about that moment of recognition, the way his heart had stuttered when he'd seen his own eyes, looking back at him from two small faces. Like I'd been punched in the chest. Like someone had just handed me everything I'd ever wanted, and then told me I couldn't have it. 'So you love them?' 'Yes,' he whispered. 'God help me, yes. I love them, and I don't even know their favorite colors, or what makes them laugh, or what they're afraid of in the dark.' Then stop thinking like a CEO and start thinking like a father. What's best for Emma and Lily? Not what's fair to you, not what's legal, not what's right. What's best for them?" The question his sister posed was the same one James had asked, and Marcus found himself confronting an uncomfortable truth. He'd been approaching this situation like a business acquisition rather than a family crisis. "They're happy," he said slowly. "They love James. They have a stable home, a routine, a life that makes sense to them. And you want to blow that up because you feel entitled to something you missed out on?" "I have rights, Marcus." Catherine's voice was sharp with the authority of an older sister. "When has anyone in our family ever put rights before relationships? When Dad was dying, you flew back from Tokyo 3 times that month, missing the biggest deal of your career, because he needed you. When I was going through my divorce, you let me and the kids live in your guest house for 8 months. You didn't do those things because you had to. You did them because you loved us." Marcus sank into his leather chair, his sister's words hitting home. "This is different. Is it? Or are you just scared that if you don't fight for them now, you'll never have another chance to be their father?" The truth of it made his chest ache. That was exactly what terrified him, that if he didn't assert his rights now, immediately, forcefully, he'd be shut out forever, that he'd become a footnote in their story rather than a chapter. "What if I meet them properly and they don't like me?" he asked quietly. "What if you fight Sophia for custody and they end up hating you for destroying the only family they've ever known?" Marcus closed his eyes. finally seeing the situation clearly. This wasn't about him or his wounded pride or his regrets. This was about two 4-year-old girls who deserved to be protected from the adult chaos swirling around their existence. "I need to apologize to Sophia," he said. "That would be a good start." Marcus spent the night awake, pacing his penthouse and crafting speeches that sounded increasingly desperate. When dawn broke over Manhattan, he made a decision that terrified him. He would go to Sophia without demands or ultimatums, without lawyers or leverage. He would go as a man asking for forgiveness, not a billionaire demanding his due. The address James had given him led to a charming colonial house in Westchester County, complete with a wraparound porch and a yard full of children's toys. Through the window, Marcus could see Emma and Lily eating breakfast at a kitchen table, their dark heads bent over bowls of cereal. Sophia answered the door before he could knock, as if she'd been watching for him. She looked older in the morning light, he realized, not in a bad way, but in the way that comes from responsibility, from sleepless nights with sick children, from the weight of making every decision alone for so long. "You're early," she said quietly. "I couldn't sleep." Marcus shifted awkwardly on her doorstep, this powerful man reduced to uncertainty by the gravity of what he'd come to do. "Sophia, I need to apologize." She studied his face, searching for something. "For what?" "For all of it. For checking out of our marriage when things got difficult. For not fighting harder to save what we had. For making you feel like you had to choose between your dreams of motherhood and our relationship." He paused, the words harder than any business negotiation he'd ever conducted. "For making you feel like you couldn't trust me with the most important thing in your life." Sophia's composure cracked slightly. "Marcus, you were right yesterday. I did give up. When the treatments kept failing, when I watched you disappearing into grief, I convinced myself that walking away was protecting us both from more pain. But really, I was just protecting myself from having to fail at something that mattered. You didn't fail. I failed you. I failed our marriage. And I failed those children before they were even conceived, because I let fear make me a coward." Sophia leaned against the doorframe, tears threatening again. "You don't understand what it was like. The hormones made me crazy, desperate. I was obsessed with getting pregnant, and I couldn't see anything else. I pushed you away too. You were fighting for our future. I was just running from it." They stood in silence for a moment, 5 years of hurt and misunderstanding hanging between them. "What do you want now, Marcus?" Sophia asked finally. "What are you hoping for?" "I want to know my daughters," he said simply, not as their legal father, not as someone who's going to disrupt their lives or challenge James's role. Just, I want them to know that they have another person in this world who loves them unconditionally. And if they don't want that, if meeting you confuses them or upsets them, then I'll step back. Their happiness comes first, it has to. I've already missed the first 4 years of their lives because of choices we both made. I won't mess up the rest of their childhood because of my need to be included." Sophia studied his face, looking for the man she'd once loved beneath the successful businessman he'd become. "James likes you," she said unexpectedly. "What?" "He came home last night and said you reminded him of his father, someone who made mistakes but was willing to own them. He thinks you're genuinely trying to do the right thing." Marcus felt a spark of hope. "And what do you think?" "I think," Sophia said carefully, "that Emma and Lily deserve to be loved by as many people as possible. And I think maybe you've learned something about what really matters. Can I meet them? Properly this time?" Sophia looked back toward the kitchen, where the sound of giggling suggested the girls were finished with breakfast and moving on to more entertaining activities. "They don't know who you are. James and I decided to tell them you're an old friend of mine who wants to meet them." "That works." "Friend of mine who wants to meet them." "That works. But Marcus, if we do this, if we let you into their lives, it has to be consistent. You can't show up when it's convenient and disappear when it gets complicated. They've had enough instability for one lifetime." "I understand. And you can't try to buy their affection with expensive gifts or fancy trips. They need presence, not presents. I get it. And you absolutely cannot undermine James's role as their father. He's the one who's been here, who's earned their trust and love. You'll have to find your own place in their lives without threatening his." Marcus nodded, humbled by the boundaries she was setting. A year ago he might have bristled at being given conditions for access to his own children. Now he recognized them as the protective instincts of a mother who'd already sacrificed everything for their well-being. "One more thing," Sophia said, her voice softer now. "Thank you." "For what?" "For not making this a legal battle. For not trying to hurt them to get back at me, for—" She struggled with the words. "For growing up enough to put them first." Emma and Lily were in the living room building an elaborate castle out of blocks when Sophia led Marcus. Inside, they looked up with curious green eyes, his eyes taking in this new adult, with the careful assessment children use to decide whether someone was friend or foe. "Girls, I want you to meet my friend Marcus," Sophia said, settling onto the couch where she could monitor the interaction. "He's someone very special who's been wanting to meet you for a long time." Emma, bolder as always, stood up and walked over to Marcus with the confidence of a child who'd never been given reason to fear strangers. "Are you the man who was writing a story at the playground?" Marcus's throat closed. Yes, I am. Did you finish it? Did the man find what he lost?" Marcus looked around the room, at these two beautiful children who shared his DNA but called another man Daddy, at the woman who'd given those children life at enormous personal cost, at the family photos on the mantelpiece that told the story of a life he'd never been part of. "I think," he said carefully, "he's still figuring that out." Lily approached more cautiously, studying Marcus with serious dark eyes that reminded him achingly of Sophia. "What kind of story was it?" "A story about second chances," Marcus replied, meaning it. "About people who make mistakes and get the opportunity to do better." "I like stories," Lily said shyly. "Daddy James reads to us every night before bed." The casual mention of James as Daddy sent a pang through Marcus's chest, but he pushed it aside. This was about the girls, not his ego. "What's your favorite story?" he asked, settling carefully onto the floor near their block castle. "Beauty and the Beast," Emma announced immediately, "but the Disney version, not the scary one." "I like the one about the Velveteen Rabbit," Lily added quietly. "The one who becomes real because someone loves him so much." Marcus felt his heart clench. Out of the mouths of babes, wasn't that exactly what he was hoping for? To become real to these children through love? "Can you help us build our castle?" Emma asked, already incorporating this new adult into her play. "We need someone tall to put the flags on top." For the next hour, Marcus found himself on his hands and knees, helping construct an increasingly elaborate fortress, while Emma narrated the adventures of the princess and dragon who lived there. Lily contributed quieter suggestions, her artistic eye ensuring the castle was beautiful as well as functional. "The princess has magic powers," Emma explained seriously, "but she only uses them to help people, never to hurt them." "That sounds like a good rule for magic powers," Marcus agreed. "Daddy James says we all have magic powers," Lily added, "like making people smile when they're sad, or giving hugs when someone's scared." "Your daddy sounds very wise." The afternoon passed in a blur of blocks and stories, juice boxes and animal crackers, the casual intimacy of spending time with children who had no agenda beyond play. Marcus learned that Emma wanted to be a veterinarian who specialized in dinosaurs, because someone needs to take care of them if they come back, while Lily thought she might want to be a teacher like Miss Sarah at preschool, because she reads stories with funny voices and always smells like flowers. When James arrived home from the hospital, Marcus expected awkwardness or territorial tension. Instead, he found himself helping serve an early dinner, while Emma regaled everyone with detailed accounts of their castle-building adventure. "Marcus helped us make the tallest tower ever," Emma announced around a mouthful of mac and cheese. "And he knows about dinosaurs, too." "Does he?" James asked with genuine interest. "What kind of dinosaurs?" "The big scary ones with teeth," Emma replied authoritatively, "but also the nice ones that eat plants." "Herbivores and carnivores," Marcus clarified, earning an impressed look from Emma. "And see? He's smart like you, Daddy," she said to James, and Marcus felt something shift in his chest at the unconscious comparison. After dinner, as they cleaned up the kitchen together, James spoke quietly to Marcus. "Thank you for being gentle with them today. They're talking about you like you're already part of their world. Is that okay?" Marcus asked, genuinely uncertain. "It's more than okay. It's what Sophia and I hope for." That night, as Marcus prepared to leave, both girls hugged him goodbye. Emma with her characteristic enthusiasm, Lily with shy sweetness that reminded him heartbreakingly of Sophia. "Will you come back and help us build more castles?" Emma asked. "If your mom and dad say it's okay, I'd love that. Can you bring more dinosaur stories next time?" "I'll see what I can find." As he drove back to Manhattan, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years, the quiet satisfaction of time well spent, of being valued for who he was rather than what he could provide. For the first time since seeing the girls in that clinic, he began to believe that maybe this impossible situation could somehow work. Over the following months, Marcus became a regular presence in the Westchester house. Uncle Marcus, the girls called him, Sophia's special friend who was really good at building block castles and always remembered to ask about their drawings and stories from school. The routine evolved naturally. Marcus would arrive Saturday mornings with fresh bagels from the girls' favorite bakery, and they'd spend the day in whatever adventure struck their fancy. Sometimes it was playground expeditions, sometimes art projects that covered the kitchen table with glitter and construction paper, sometimes nature walks where Emma collected interesting rocks and Lily picked flowers for elaborate bouquets. Marcus learned the intricate rules of their imaginary games, the complex social dynamics of their preschool class, the difference between tears that required bandages and tears that needed hugs. He attended Emma's first soccer game. She scored 2 goals and spent most of the second half picking dandelions. Lily's preschool music recital. She sang Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star with unprecedented seriousness, and both girls' first school Halloween party. Emma as a T-Rex, Lily as a fairy princess. The girls accepted his presence the way children accept all adult mysteries, without question, with easy affection, as simply part of their expanding world. To them, Uncle Marcus was the grown-up who never seemed too busy to play, who remembered that Emma liked her sandwiches cut diagonally and Lily preferred her juice in the cup with butterflies on it. But Marcus was learning something more profound than their preferences and personalities. He was learning what it meant to love someone more than yourself, to find joy in small moments, to measure success not in quarterly profits, but in bedtime giggles and scraped-knee kisses. One December evening, as Marcus was reading to the girls before bedtime, a tradition that had somehow evolved naturally over the months, Lily looked up at him with those serious dark eyes that reminded him so much of Sophia. "Uncle Marcus, why don't you have any children of your own?" Emma looked up from where she'd been tracing the pictures in their book. "Yeah, you'd be a really good daddy." Marcus's breath caught. Beside him, he felt Sophia tense where she sat in the doorway, watching this nightly ritual she'd somehow allowed to become routine. They'd talked about this moment, anticipated it, but the reality of their innocent question still felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. "Well," Marcus said carefully, "sometimes grown-ups have children in different ways. Some people have babies, some people adopt children, and some people—" He looked up at Sophia, who gave him the smallest nod of encouragement. "Some people get to love children who belong to other families. Like how Daddy James loves us even though we didn't grow in his tummy?" Emma asked with 4-year-old logic. "Exactly like that." "So you love us like an extra daddy?" Lily asked, the concept making perfect sense to her uncomplicated worldview. Marcus's heart clenched with the weight of truth and hope and careful boundaries all tangled together. "If that's okay with you." Both girls considered this gravely. Then Emma shrugged with the casual acceptance of childhood. "That's good. Extra daddies means extra presents at Christmas." Lily giggled, and the moment passed into laughter and the resumption of story time. But later, after the girls were asleep and James had gone to his home office to finish patient notes, Sophia lingered in the kitchen where Marcus was helping clean up dishes. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For not trying to replace James, for not confusing them, for—" She struggled with the words. "For letting them love you without making them choose." Marcus set down the dish towel, turning to face the woman who'd once been his whole world, and was now something more complex. The mother of his children, the keeper of their happiness, someone he was learning to love in an entirely different way. "I was angry," he admitted. "When I first saw them, when I realized what you'd done, I wanted to hurt you the way I felt hurt. But they're not weapons, Sophia. They're just little girls who deserve to be loved by everyone who wants to love them." "I should have told you," she said, the apology she'd been carrying for years finally finding voice. "When I decided to use the embryos, when I got pregnant, when they were born, I should have told you." "Yes," Marcus agreed gently. "You should have. But I understand why you didn't." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Years of hurt and misunderstanding finally settling into something manageable. Not forgiveness exactly, but a mutual recognition of the choices that had brought them to this moment. "Marcus," Sophia said eventually, "James and I have been talking about the future, about what happens as the girls get older and start asking more questions." Marcus felt his stomach tighten with familiar anxiety. "And we think they should know. Not now, they're too young to understand. But someday, when they're ready, they should know you're their biological father. They should know the whole story." The relief was overwhelming. "You mean that? They're going to look more like you as they get older. Emma already has your stubborn streak and your competitive drive. Lily gets that same little frown line you get when you're concentrating on something difficult." Sophia smiled, and for a moment she looked like the young woman he'd fallen in love with a decade ago. "Besides, they love you, really love you. They deserve to know why that feels so natural, so right." Marcus felt tears he hadn't expected burning behind his eyes. "When? When they're old enough to understand that families come in all different shapes. When they can handle the knowledge that sometimes adults make mistakes, but love finds a way to fix what seemed broken." Sophia paused, studying his face. "When they're ready to hear that their Uncle Marcus fought very hard to be part of their lives, because he loves them more than anything in the world." 2 years later, Marcus stood in the backyard of the Westchester house, watching Emma and Lily chase fireflies in the summer dusk. At 6 years old, they'd grown into themselves, Emma bold and athletic, already showing signs of the leadership qualities that would serve her well in whatever future she chose. Lily thoughtful and artistic, always creating something beautiful from whatever materials she could find. The house itself had evolved too. Marcus had quietly helped with the addition that expanded the girls' bedrooms and created a proper playroom, though he'd been careful to let James make all the decisions and take all the credit. His name wasn't on any deeds or mortgages, but his presence was woven into the fabric of their daily lives in ways that felt both natural and profound. James emerged from the house carrying a tray of lemonade, setting it on the patio table where Sophia sat reading, her hand resting unconsciously on her growing belly. The baby, a boy they'd learned, was due in September. Marcus would be Uncle Marcus to him too, another layer in this complicated, beautiful family structure they'd all somehow learned to navigate. "Uncle Marcus," Emma called, running over with a mason jar full of blinking lights. "Look how many we caught." "That's amazing," Marcus said, accepting the jar with appropriate reverence. "What are you going to wish for?" "That's a secret," Lily said primly, taking the jar to whisper something urgent to the trapped fireflies before carefully unscrewing the lid to let them go. As the light scattered back into the darkness, Marcus felt the familiar swell of love and gratitude that had become his constant companion. This wasn't the family he'd planned or the relationship he'd dreamed of at 35. But it was real and it was theirs and it was enough. The girls would learn the truth someday, probably sooner than any of them expected. They'd have questions, maybe anger, certainly confusion about why the adults in their lives had made everything so complicated. But they'd also have the unshakable knowledge that they were loved by multiple adults, who'd put their well-being above personal grievances, who'd found a way to coexist and collaborate in raising them. Marcus pulled out his phone, scrolling to the photo he'd taken last weekend of Emma and Lily finger-painting with James, while Sophia laughed at something Emma had said about dinosaurs and art not mixing well. It was chaotic and messy and perfect, a family portrait that conventional wisdom said shouldn't work, but somehow did. His story, the one Lily had asked about on that first day at the playground, had found its ending after all. The man who'd lost something precious hadn't just found it again. He'd found something infinitely more valuable, the wisdom to know that love multiplies rather than divides, that families can be built in ways no one expects, and that sometimes the greatest gift you can give your children is the grace to let them be loved by everyone brave enough to try. "Uncle Marcus," Lily said, appearing at his elbow with that serious expression that meant she was working out something important in her mind. "When I grow up, will you still come to our house?" If you want me to, Marcus replied, crouching down to her level. Would you like that? Yes, because even when I'm a grown-up, I'll still need extra hugs and extra stories and extra people to love me. Emma nodded sagely, as if her sister had articulated something profound. Plus, who else is going to know all the good dinosaur facts? Marcus laughed, gathering both girls into his arms for the kind of spontaneous hug that had become as natural as breathing. I promise I'll always be here for extra hugs, extra stories, and yes, extra dinosaur facts. Even when we're teenagers and don't want to hug anyone, Emma asked with the wisdom of a 6-year-old who'd overheard adult conversations about the mysterious horrors of adolescence. Especially then, Marcus said solemnly. Teenagers need extra love even when they pretend they don't want it. Sophia watched from the patio, her heart full as she observed this man who'd once been her husband, learning to be the father their daughters needed. James appeared beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders as they witnessed this moment of pure family joy. He's good with them, James said quietly. He's learning what I learned when they were born, Sophia replied. That love isn't about possession or control. It's about showing up, consistently, without conditions. As if sensing the weight of adult observation, Emma and Lily broke free from Marcus's embrace and returned to their firefly chase. Marcus joined Sophia and James on the patio, accepting a glass of lemonade, and settling into the comfortable rhythm of shared parenting they'd somehow mastered. I got a call from my lawyer today, Marcus said, his tone carefully casual. The final adoption papers came through. James, you're now officially Emma and Lily's legal father, in every sense. James had insisted on adopting the girls after he and Sophia married, wanting to ensure their legal security and his parental rights. Marcus had not only consented, but had actively supported the process, understanding that legal fatherhood and biological connection were entirely different things. Thank you, James said simply, for making that possible. Thank you for making it unnecessary to fight for it, Marcus replied. You've been their dad in every way that matters, since long before any court documents made it official. Sophia felt tears threatening again. Happy tears this time, tears of gratitude for these two men who'd found a way to love her children without competing for territory or recognition. Speaking of legal matters, she said, reaching for an envelope she'd placed on the patio table earlier. Marcus, I have something for you. Marcus opened the envelope to find official documentation. Not legal papers this time, but something more precious. Emma and Lily's artwork from the past 2 years, carefully preserved and organized chronologically. Drawings that showed the evolution of their family understanding. From early pictures that included Mommy, Daddy, Emma, and Lily to more recent masterpieces that featured Mommy, Daddy, Emma, Lily, Uncle Marcus, and baby brother. They've been drawing you into our family since almost the beginning, Sophia explained. I thought you should have copies of their progression, their way of making sense of where you fit. Marcus studied the drawings, seeing his evolution from a stick figure standing slightly apart from the family group to someone clearly integrated into their world. In the most recent picture, Emma had given him a cape labeled Super Uncle, while Lily had surrounded him with hearts and flowers. There's something else, Sophia said, her voice carrying a note of nervousness Marcus hadn't heard in months. James and I have been talking about the future, about what we want to tell the children as they get older. And, Marcus prompted gently, we want to start preparing them now, gradually, for the truth about their biological origins. Not the complicated adult emotions and legal battles, but the basic facts. That sometimes babies are made with help from doctors, that sometimes families come from unexpected places, that love is the most important ingredient in making a family work. James nodded, adding, we think by the time they're 8 or 9, they'll be ready to understand that you're not just Uncle Marcus who loves them like a father. You're actually their biological father who loves them enough to let them have the stability they needed. Marcus felt his world shift on its axis once again, but this time towards something beautiful, rather than terrifying. You mean they'll know? They'll know that you and I created them together during our marriage, that circumstances kept you apart during their early years, but that you fought to be part of their lives because you loved them before you even met them, Sophia said. They'll know that families can be complicated, but that love always finds a way. What if they're angry? What if they don't understand why we kept it from them? Then we'll help them work through those feelings, James said with quiet confidence. All of us together. Because that's what families do. They face difficulties as a team. Emma and Lily came running back to the patio, breathless and glowing with summer joy. "Mommy, we let all the fireflies go," Emma announced. They needed to be free to find their families. "That was very kind of you," Sophia said, pulling both girls onto her lap despite her expanding belly. "Did you make wishes before you let them go?" "I wished for the baby to be born healthy and for Uncle Marcus to come to the hospital to meet him," Lily said seriously. "I wished for our family to stay happy forever," Emma added, then looked directly at Marcus. "All of us together." Marcus felt his heart clench with the perfection of their innocent wishes, hopes that encompassed exactly what he'd been afraid to hope for himself. "Those sound like very good wishes," he managed. "Do you think they'll come true?" Lily asked. Marcus looked around at this impossible family they'd all somehow created, at James, who'd loved without condition, at Sophia, who'd fought for her children's happiness above all else, at Emma and Lily, who'd accepted love in whatever form it came. "I think," he said carefully, "that the best wishes are the ones we make come true ourselves." The conversation they'd all been anticipating came on a rainy Sunday afternoon in October, 2 months after baby Samuel's birth. Emma and Lily were sprawled on the living room floor, coloring while Marcus read nearby, and Sophia nursed the baby. James was at the hospital, dealing with an emergency case, leaving the 3 adults who'd become Samuel's parenting team to manage a quiet Sunday at home. "Uncle Marcus," Emma said suddenly, looking up from her drawing. "Mrs. Peterson at school said you look exactly like me and Lily. She said we have the same eyes and the same stubborn chin." Marcus felt his stomach drop. They'd known this moment would come, but somehow it still felt sudden, unprepared for. "Do you think we look alike?" he asked carefully. "Totally," Emma said with enthusiasm. "Lily, show him your thinking face." Lily obliged, scrunching her forehead in concentration, and Marcus couldn't deny the resemblance was striking. "Mrs. Peterson asked if you were our daddy," Lily added quietly. "But I told her Daddy James is our daddy." "That's right," Sophia said gently, settling Samuel in his bouncer and moving to sit on the floor with the girls. "Daddy James is definitely your daddy. But Uncle Marcus is very special too." "How special?" Emma asked with the directness of a 6-year-old. Sophia looked at Marcus, a question in her eyes. They'd planned to have this conversation together, with James present, but life rarely followed careful plans. Marcus nodded, giving her permission to begin. "You know how we've talked about how babies are made?" Sophia began carefully. "How sometimes mummies and daddies need help from doctors to create babies." Both girls nodded solemnly. They'd had age-appropriate conversations about reproduction and medical assistance as part of preparing them for Samuel's arrival. "Well, a long time ago, before Daddy James, I was married to Uncle Marcus, and we wanted to have babies together, but we needed help from doctors. The doctors helped us create you, Emma and Lily, but you weren't born right away." "What do you mean?" Lily asked, her artistic mind trying to visualize this complex timeline. "You waited," Sophia said simply. "You waited until I was ready to be the best mommy I could be, and until Uncle Marcus was ready to be part of your lives, and until Daddy James was ready to help take care of all of us." Emma considered this with characteristic pragmatism. "So Uncle Marcus helped make us, but Daddy James helps take care of us." "Exactly," Marcus said, finding his voice. "I helped your mommy create you because we both wanted you so much. But Daddy James is the one who's been your father every day since you were little. Reading stories, teaching you to ride bikes, taking care of you when you're sick. So you're like our original daddy and our everyday daddy?" Lily asked, trying to categorize this information in a way that made sense. "That's a very good way to think about it," Sophia said, relief evident in her voice at her daughter's matter-of-fact acceptance. "Is that why you love us so much?" Emma asked Marcus. "Because you helped make us?" "I love you because you're Emma and Lily," Marcus replied honestly. "Funny and smart and kind and brave. I would love you even if I hadn't helped create you, just like Daddy James loves you and baby Samuel. But it's extra special that you did help make us," Lily said with the wisdom of a child who understood that love came in many forms. Very extra special, Marcus agreed. Emma returned to her coloring, apparently satisfied with this explanation. Can we still call you Uncle Marcus? I like that name. You can call me whatever feels right to you, Marcus said. Uncle Marcus, biological daddy, extra father, whatever makes you comfortable. I think Uncle Marcus is perfect, Lily decided, because you're like a daddy but also like a best grown-up friend. And just like that, the conversation that had terrified all the adults involved became another milestone in their unconventional family's journey. The girls asked a few more practical questions: why Marcus and Sophia hadn't stayed married, why they'd waited so long to tell them, whether this meant they had more relatives they didn't know about, and then moved on to more pressing concerns, like whether they could have pizza for dinner and who was going to help them build a fort in the basement. When James and Sophia decided to renew their wedding vows on their 3rd anniversary, they included Emma and Lily as more than flower girls. They were family representatives, officially welcoming everyone into their chosen family structure. Marcus watched from the 2nd row, holding baby Samuel as the girls walked down the aisle, scattering rose petals and grinning at the assembled guests. When the minister asked who gave their blessing to this union, Emma and Lily answered in unison, "We do, and Uncle Marcus does too." The laughter that rippled through the small gathering was warm and accepting, a community that had learned to embrace this family's unique configuration. Marcus's parents were there, having flown in from Florida to meet their granddaughters properly for the first time. Catherine sat beside him with her own children, who'd quickly adopted Emma and Lily as cousins, despite the complicated genetics involved. During the reception, Emma grabbed the microphone during the toast portion of the evening. "I want to say thank you to all the grown-ups who love us," she announced with 6-year-old authority. "Mommy and Daddy James, and Uncle Marcus and Grandma Eleanor and Grandpa Robert and Aunt Catherine and everyone who helps take care of us. We have the biggest family ever." Later, as the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Marcus found a quiet moment with Sophia and James on the garden terrace of the small venue they'd chosen. "Thank you," he said simply, "for letting me be part of this, for making room for me in their lives, for—" He struggled with words adequate to the magnitude of his gratitude. "Thank you for making it easy," Sophia replied, "for putting them first, for supporting our choices even when they were hard, for showing them that love doesn't diminish when it's shared." James raised his champagne glass. To unconventional families and the people brave enough to create them. They toasted quietly as Emma and Lily ran through the garden with their cousins, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze, baby Samuel sleeping peacefully in Marcus's arms. 5 years later, Emma and Lily were 11 years old. Samuel was a precocious 5-year-old, and Marcus had become the kind of father he'd never imagined possible. Not the primary parent, that role belonged to James and Sophia, but something equally valuable, the consistent, loving adult who showed up for soccer games and school plays, who helped with homework and listened to preteen drama, who provided another perspective and another safe harbor in the inevitable storms of childhood. The girls had long since integrated the truth of their origins into their understanding of themselves and their world. They told friends matter-of-factly that they had a bonus dad who helped create them and a regular dad who raised them, and that both were equally important parts of their lives. Emma, now showing clear signs of inherited ambition and leadership, had decided she wanted to be a doctor like James and help families the way their family had been helped. Lily, artistic and intuitive, talked about writing children's books about families that looked different from traditional expectations. Samuel, who had never known any reality other than having 3 devoted parents, considered himself the luckiest kid in the world, and frequently told his preschool classmates about his regular daddy and his extra daddy with equal pride. On Father's Day that year, Marcus received 2 cards, one from Emma and Lily that read, "To our original dad, thank you for loving us enough to let us be happy," and one from Samuel that simply said, "To Daddy Marcus, you're the best extra daddy ever." Later that evening, as the extended family gathered for their traditional Father's Day barbecue, Marcus found himself on the back porch with James, watching their children play in the yard while Sophia and his mother supervised the grill. "Any regrets?" James asked quietly. Marcus considered the question seriously. Did he regret missing the girls' first steps, first words, those crucial early years? Of course. Did he wish he'd handled his divorce from Sophia differently, been braver about love and loss, and the messy realities of building a family? Absolutely. But regrets were different from disappointments, and disappointments were different from grief. No, he said finally. No regrets. This isn't the family I planned, but it's the family we built together, and it's beautiful. James nodded, understanding. The girls asked me last week what I would have done if you'd fought us for custody when you first found out about them. What did you tell them? That I would have fought back because I was their father and they were my children, but that I was grateful you were wise enough to see that fighting would have hurt them more than it helped anyone. Marcus watched Emma teaching Samuel to throw a football while Lily picked flowers for an elaborate bouquet. They were never mine to fight for, he said. They were always just children who deserved to be loved and protected. It took me a while to understand the difference. That's what makes you a good father, James said. Not biology, not legal documents. Understanding that being a parent means putting their needs above your own ego. As the sun set over their shared family gathering, Marcus felt the deep satisfaction of a story that had found its proper ending. Not the ending he'd written in his mind during those angry, hurt-filled first months after discovering Emma and Lily's existence, but the ending they'd all written together through patience and compromise and the radical decision to prioritize love over ownership. His daughters would grow up knowing they were wanted by multiple adults, supported by an extended network of people who'd chosen to love them despite complicated circumstances. They would understand that families could be built in many ways, that love multiplied rather than divided, and that sometimes the most beautiful relationships were the ones that required the most grace to create. The man who'd once lost everything he thought he wanted had found something infinitely more valuable, the wisdom to know that love was not about possession, but about presence, not about rights, but about relationships, not about what he could take, but about what he could give. And in giving freely without conditions or demands, he'd received the greatest gift of all, the unconditional love of 3 children who called him family and meant it with their whole hearts. As fireflies began to dance in the gathering dusk, Marcus smiled and joined his family in the yard, ready for whatever adventures tomorrow might bring. The story was complete, but the living, the daily, ordinary, extraordinary business of loving and being loved would continue for all the years to come. What did you think of this incredible story of forgiveness, second chances, and unconventional family love? Could you have made the same choice Marcus did, putting his children's happiness above his own desires? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming true stories that will restore your faith in the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds.